My name is Matthew Todd, and welcome to Inside the Scale Up. This is the podcast for founders and executives in tech looking to make an impact and learn from their peers within the tech business. We lift the lid on tech businesses, interviewing leaders and following their journey from startup to scale up and beyond, covering everything from developing product market fit, funding and fundraising models to value proposition structure and growth marketing. We learn from their journey so that you can understand how they really work, the failures, the successes, the lessons along the way, so that you can take their learnings and apply them within your own startup or scale up and join the ever-growing list of high-growth UK SaaS businesses. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm here with Adam Mitcheson. Adam, good to have you here today.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
No worries. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, learning more about your business, but also your kind of journey into that, as well as some of the ways in which it helps, the clients that you've got on your platform as well. And as always, I'd like the guests to introduce their platform. It's always good to hear their elevator pitch as well. So Adam, over to you. Tell us what your company is.
Thank you. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of my2be, which is an online mentoring platform. So we help to automate and scale the mentoring process, which has a significant impact on diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as things like talent retention and development. Working with some amazing clients here in the UK and in the US more so, with the likes of Box and Nextdoor.
Cool, fantastic. And I want to dig into more about what my2be is, how it works, some of the benefits. But it'd be good to kind of start. I always like to kind of hear from founders, what are some of the kind of motivations and reasons that led to them starting their business in the first place? Was it through personal experience? Was it through, for other reasons? So, what led to founding my2be in the first place? What was your mentoring experience?
So, it was exactly that. It was a personal experience. I'd found myself in what I used to refer to as an accidental career. I was working in banking here in Manchester. So this wasn't the champagne lunches side of banking. It was the operational side. And I was sort of just landed there, and I was like wondering how to navigate the potential of the career and what I could achieve in it. And I wasn't really getting any answers to my questions. It's a very siloed organization, massive organization. And the department acted almost like its own mini organization within it. And it's very difficult to then see what landscape is outside of there. So I wasn't getting anywhere with what I was trying to achieve until a mentoring program that the bank provided. I became part of that. I had to apply for it. I was accepted onto it. And through that, not only did I just get answers to some of my very simple, basic questions, but it was a genuinely life-changing experience for me. It gave me that network. It gave me that opportunities that I was seeking. It helped me create things for myself. It also gave me that big picture perspective. So the department I was in on a daily basis was not the best place to be. It was quite a toxic environment. And having that big picture perspective meant I could be patient and, using my network and create opportunities, knowing that I wasn't going to be in that environment forever. My colleagues were not so fortunate to have this afforded to them. And I couldn't see why. I thought it was insane that I was getting so much benefit out of it. And, why weren't my colleagues? Why isn't this open to everyone? Yeah. And the simple answer really was scale. Trying to manage a mentoring program, trying to deploy it, trying to match people up, trying to then find out how they've progressed and seeing if they've had, simple thing. Have you had a meeting? What are the outcomes of it? Was just impossible from a manual perspective to manage at any sort of scale. So the idea for the technology was there. Now I'm not technically minded, so I managed to get in touch with an old school friend, Damien, who's my now co-founder and CTO. We'd had similar experiences. We sort of reconnected on the startup scene in Manchester, and it made sense for us to go and do this together. That was back in 2018, and then since then, here we are today. So that's sort of the founding side of it.
I think that's great. It was definitely a personal problem you experienced. So when you were at that bank, then you mentioned that your colleagues kind of felt trapped in their jobs. They didn't have that opportunity available to them. So did the bank kind of recognize that they had to cap numbers in this mentoring program for it to work?
Yeah, for that reason, they had to do that. They had to basically only make it available for a certain number of people, for the exact reason that they couldn't scale it. They couldn't deliver it for more than that. It was essentially a couple of people were managing it almost full time to make it work. I remember we had sort of events throughout the year. So it was a year-long program, and throughout the year we had events. And I think halfway through, someone had turned up and they were like, "Oh, my mentor left the business," and they hadn't, there's no way of tracking this, no way of flagging it.
Yeah.
So they were just sort of a lame duck, like sort of situation. Sort of they hadn't really mentioned it, or they hadn't been replaced, so they didn't know what to do. And it was like, well, you're halfway through a program, how does it work now? So there's things like that. It was just like, when you're not tracking it, you can lose sight of things. And even people in their first meetings, they might have gone, maybe this isn't the right person, or things like that come up as well. A lot of the common problems you'll see with a program. So when you're doing that for, I was one of 100 people, which was a lot in some respects, but at the same time, the region I was in is 10, 15,000 people. So it's a tiny minutiae of the population of that organization. So they just couldn't do it. As simple as that. They couldn't roll it out any further.
Yeah, I see. And I suppose you were one of the lucky ones then to kind of have that opportunity to have that experience, get all those benefits you mentioned, or network and everything else as well. Why then leave that to try and start a mentoring platform versus make the most of the opportunities that you've got that most of your peers didn't within that bank? Was that not an opportunity for you to kind of accelerate your journey there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the reality is, I think I'd done a few things to try and basically accelerate my career there. Even without being technical, I managed to build almost like a training platform. And that was I think having had that done, that's what essentially led me to the reason I'm doing this now so I built this training platform that was very rudimentary. It was using a tool called Brainshark to record PowerPoints so I could do voiceover, because I asked, can we get QuickTime on the computer so I can record my voice over a presentation? And they said no, but we've got this tool, so you can use that. So I basically built a playbook for a process, because we were always told, if you couldn't remember how to do something, go and read the procedure. And that was just, to me, was just the worst response I could get, because I'm a visual learner. I need to be involved in a process to learn properly. I can't just read it and understand it. There was always gaps in these things as well, and they were out of date, so it was just always rubbish. So when I did it as a live, me doing the actual process. I did it as like screenshot after screenshot after screenshot, everything covered, and recorded it. And they were blown away by this. And as it happened, my manager took it to India to train something like 200 people at the same time. And they found it really efficient. They found it was less error prone, because everyone was getting taught exactly the same. They then had it as a resource that they could come back to at any one point. So rather than trying to find page 469 on a procedure, you go to 1 minute 30 in a video and look at it and watch it and listen to it. And I thought, right, okay, this is good. This might become, something I roll out and take charge of within the bank. And I gave everything to make that happen. But the day-to-day of the bank, the enthusiasm dipped after a while. And I was like, it was just that thing of like, when this then came up as an idea, I think two big factors really. I think the first one is I thought this is bigger than something that could work inside the bank. This could actually help everyone, everyone in their career path, from education to whatever career they choose or end up in. And then the second one was that impetus of, I tried to make this happen before, or make something happen before within the bank, and it ultimately didn't happen because of the operations inside. So I thought, if anyone's going to make this happen, it's going to be me. So that was it. The bit was between my teeth. I started to just try and do what I could on my own. Started to get there, help from friends and things like that. The momentum built then to eventually leaving my my job and going full time.
Cool, excellent. I think it's great that you didn't kind of take that setback, due to those internal, operational issues, and leave it there. It's great that you're able to kind of see the potential for this to scale, not just within that organization, but within, many other organizations as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It was just, a lot of those experiences really shaped how this came about, how it happened and how I'm now doing that. And I think it's at the time it can be tough because it's frustrating. You've built something, they've seen the value add in it. They gave me an award for it as well. And it was like,
okay,
right, so why would we not roll this out? And it's like, I thought, and it just became that thing of like, there was never really an answer. It just got pushed to one side and pushed to one side and pushed to one side because they just got on. I mean, it's a very high paced environment. It's very, spinning, it's very much spinning plates and things like that. And, that's one of the things that people are trying to do. And when something they just don't see as priority necessarily comes up, they just don't bother with it. And that was frustrating because we'd seen the value add, we'd seen the recognition of it. We knew what it would do in terms of all the benefits for the bank. But I think again, having been through that experience, when this came around, it was like, okay, there's something here, and I'm not going to rely on other people for it this time. I tried that before with something else and it didn't happen. So it's up to me. If I don't try, I won't know. So and here we are, still going. So
yeah, no, fantastic. So having made that decision, having got that enthusiasm, then to see this into your life yourself, what did that look like then, of rolling out that kind of early version, getting those first customers on board?
So the earliest sort of version of it was, again, I had to get something built. I gate crashed a hackathon. I found a couple of sort of very stereotypical junior devs, kids who just love to code kind of thing. And I just sort of spoke to them, and I started working on it with them over the summer. I had a very small budget from some savings, and I just said, look, lads, this is what I've got. This is what I want to do. Can we have a crack at this over the summer and see where we get to? And they were brilliant lads. And that was it. We went from there and we built that up. And then in terms of the momentum, then it was a case of, I actually, the job I was in was I was doing something like stupid, like 12-hour days, most days. And I was trying to then work on this at the same time. And it actually just made me ruthlessly efficient at work. So I think there was a lot of time faffing about in that 12-hour day.
Yeah.
That was just part of the culture and things like that. And I just cut all that out, and, I didn't do any less work. I actually just did, more efficient work. And I was doing, getting in at 9 and getting away at 5, ensuring that I could do things in the evening, go to events, work on things, work on the product, and then also get enough sleep to stay sane and get in and do my day job. And that momentum built up to the point where it was like, okay, this is getting stretched a bit thin. And I took a week off where I then just lived as if I was doing this full time. So just sort of like a practice run for seeing how much I could get done. And I remember
I think that's great advice, by the way, for anyone thinking of quitting their job and going all in. Take a week off and practice first.
Definitely, because there was a couple of things around that for me. One, I remember going out that morning on the Monday, and I was out the house by 8 a.m. I was in a meeting by 8:30, 9 o'clock. I didn't get home till the evening. It was a long day, but I wasn't. I didn't come back. I came back absolutely buzzing. But the other thing about that was my parents really saw how serious I was at that point. They were like, okay, you really are serious. So, if you're in a position where, whether it's partner, whether it's parents, whether it's kids, whatever it is, where you're going, I'm going to potentially leave a job to do this. I think when they see how serious you are, and, they know you're going to commit to it, they don't think it's just a pipe dream or something, you're going to actually throw everything at it, then they back you. They take it a bit more seriously themselves and think, okay, I can see that you're going to do this. So it's just a matter of timing then. And then that was it.
Cool. So in terms of paying customers, and how long was it before you got the first paying customers on the platform?
Yeah, so we didn't get our first paid customers till 2020, and that was a bit of a whirlwind, to be honest. And so myself and Damien co-founded together in 2018, and it was October 2019. I was in the US, so up to this point, we've basically just been building out the product, and we were looking at, the idea of mentoring is that it can go in so many different directions, and there's so many different verticals it can support. And I think the problem we had was trying to then narrow that, and we're almost building like a one size fits all sort of platform at that point. And it was that trip to the States in October 2019 where I had my sort of road to Damascus moment. I was heading to a conference for BoxWorks. And as I was heading down the street to the Moscone Center in San Francisco, I remember, never forget, just seeing the signs of Box, Zoom, Slack, and Okta. And the thing that struck me about that was the four signs were all the same font size, all the same color scheme. There was no standout logo of the four. And I thought that was really bizarre because it was Box's conference. Silicon Valley is a very like dog eat dog environment. And I thought, what's going on here? So I remember speaking to someone who then explained to me that, they're in a partnership. They recognize each other as the best in class for what they do. The best content cloud provider, the best video conference tool, the best team communication tool, the best security and onboarding tool. So rather than trying to outbuild each other, they decided to work together. And essentially, as a four, were the leading tools in the future of the world of work. And another moment on that trip was where an investor I was talking to said that it was a massive advantage to have the team in Manchester because of the costs, and the talent's equal and things like that. Whereas previously, everyone had said you have to be in the Valley, you have to build your whole team here. But the cost and things like that, I think there are two factors. I think the cost of living and the cost of running a business in the Valley, it just got to the point where it is extortionate. And the other thing was the idea of these tools being able to enable distributed teams meant that you didn't have to have everyone there. So that sort of light bulb moment there was the idea of, okay, this is going to change how we all work. We're going to have more distributed teams. We're going to have the ability to work anywhere. We're going to use these tools in a more regular way to work. And that was it. The vision then became, we become the fifth logo on that wall as the best in class for developing people. And it was from there on, we just went all in on enterprise. So that changed our conversations, it changed our pitch, changed the build of the platform. It really, and that was really useful because it essentially drove us down a single track. And, we weren't going off in all these different directions. I think when in that early days of like sort of customer discovery, it was like you'd talk to a university one day, get really excited, talk to a business the next day and get really excited. But it was hard to know where you were going to land. And it was like, well, can it do this? It's like, yeah, it can. But then it's like, well, does it do that? Yeah, it can. But you sort of, like say, when you're trying to do more of a one size fits all, you're not really doing it for anyone. The business version was just like, okay, that's it. And we started to build conversations. And then the pandemic hit in the March of 2020. And we actually thought this could be a huge opportunity for us. If you look at, the likes of what happened with Zoom, obviously is the number one example of a software tool going through the roof. We thought maybe this could be a moment in time where this really then gets the awareness and the traction. And actually the opposite happened because people were unsure about what was happening with employees. They couldn't really invest in their benefit and their retention. They were totally unsure about what was happening if they would have a company in 6 months' time. So it almost threw us out a bit. But what happened then was our first customer came from a network. So it was a group of people who are basically preparing for retirement, and we were putting them together with young entrepreneurs. So in that moment, in the climate of everyone was panicking and not knowing what was happening and the uncertainty. It was a really massively rewarding piece for us in that these young entrepreneurs, we were able to speak to these experienced people from, who ran their own businesses or were high up in businesses, and able to advise and guide them, and help them through the process. And that was just massive for us. It was great. But again, because we've been focusing on building an enterprise tool, and then we'd reverted almost back to the network piece, it was a bit of really difficult. It was quite a challenge, to be honest. And, we took a step back. We recognized where, we were trying to have the conversation around, this is what we're building. And they're like, well, but the customer was saying we need it to use and do this. Yeah. And that experience was hugely valuable because, after butting heads a bit, we got on a really good footing with them, really transparent, really open, built a fantastic relationship with them. And that experience was crucial to then landing Box as a client. So Box were our first major client. We'd had, a few smaller ones but then I think that experience through the earlier customer journey, when we came to talking with Box and getting that over the line, we knew how to deliver. We knew what we were building for. We knew where to focus. We knew a lot more about customer attention and things like that. And it just helped that whole conversation and experience. So they've been a fantastic partner of ours. We've worked extremely closely with them. That's helped us massively. And it's obviously delivered for them because we converted what was a initial pilot with them into a multi-year contract partnership. So I think that was when our earlier customers came in, and then we're starting to again see build out now. So
yeah, no, I think that's interesting. I think it's interesting that you said that experience helped shape the conversation that you then had with Box. I was just kind of interested to know, was that from, those early kind of smaller customers you got on board? Was it from talking to prospects and finding out who it wasn't a fit for as much as who it was a fit for? What were some of the things that you could actually take to that conversation with Box?
Yeah, I think it was all of that. If I'm honest, it was you learn about what people want, what they don't want, especially when you're talking to different types of potential customers. When we were talking to, say, education providers or public sector, it's a very different conversation to an enterprise, and it's a different conversation in the UK than it is in the US as well, slightly. And when it came to Box, I think one of the pivotal moments for that was a lot of the regular feedback people give is that they are trying to work out how a program is going to work internally and then see if they can apply it to a platform. And we took the initiative there and just said, look, we do this every day. This is what we do. We run programs. We know what works, what doesn't. We know what questions you're going to get asked. Let us help you with that. So that was the bit that I think changed that conversation, because then they were like, okay, this is great. We do need a bit of a handhold, and then we'll apply everything to the platform. So we did that, and that helped us. It helped them. We got a really good lesson in the onboarding experience and the program delivery experience as well from an enterprise through that conversation. And that's helping us again further build out our platform, because we look at all the bits and pieces around that and go, then it's like, okay, how do we move some of this into the onboarding experience from the platform side? So it becomes more software focused. And that's just been, let's say, game changing for us, that we can just build a lot of that in and just make that, when people are looking at setting up a program or launching something, that they can actually do it quite simply and then scale it.
Yeah. And I think there's a couple of interesting things about going down that enterprise route, but also going down that US customer route, that I see a lot of UK, startups, especially even into the scale up phase, almost a bit hesitant to like, we're not ready for enterprise customers yet. We need to get more smaller customers. Yet you're actually saying that no, the smaller customers cause you to lose focus because there's so much variation. And I also see a lot of UK founders, kind of planning to go to the US versus, seeing the opportunity of the internet as a global business.
Yeah, that is exactly it. It's it makes total sense to start with what's on your doorstep, but I think the pandemic did bring that globalness to everyone. It was that's it. You can buy things from anywhere. You can deliver things from anywhere because we all had to. Everyone was forced into that situation. I talk about when we went to enterprise and the vision for it in October 2019. Never in a million years did I think the companies I used to work for, the banks, would adopt this way of working and this hybrid way of working, remote way of working, because it just wasn't ever on the roadmap of the culture or anything like that.
Yeah.
But they had to, and because they've had to, because everyone was forced into it, it proved that there's the revolution in work happening, and everyone's seeing the light, and that's it. So, I think, as you pointed out, it's why would you not look globally? I think that's the beauty of software, is that you can purchase it from almost anywhere. And it will deliver. You don't necessarily know where that company's based if you go on to try and buy something. And I had a conversation with another founder recently, and he said, like, they've built a business here in Manchester, and they've done a fantastic job. And I was asking them about how they've done, how did they branch out into the States and things like that. And they said essentially their first customer came from Australia, and they didn't even have to speak to them. So that was a watershed moment for them, because they're like, right, this is the beauty of software as a service. It can be anywhere, and you can purchase it from anywhere, and your customers can come from anywhere. It's the beauty of the internet. It's that availability everywhere. So yeah, I think it does make total sense where you could, and even now, we're back in the ability for face to face for most people. You can go and see people and meet them on the doorstep and have the conversation with them eye to eye, compared to over a Zoom. But I think that what it proved to us is you can do things from all over the world. And the other thing about going to the US first for us was a lot of that is the nature of the product. So, with that first pilot we did with Box, the focus was on developing underrepresented talent. Now, we hear a fair bit around diversity, equity, and inclusion in the UK, but I think it's really not at the top of a lot of people's agendas. I think whereas the US, it's a lot more prominent and a lot more urgent. And the idea, the difference over there is that they've basically, we saw over the last couple of years, a lot of people around the world have reached a point where we've had enough, and it can't just be a policy anymore. It can't just be like a celebration month or whatever where you change your logo. You've got to start taking actions. You've got to start having greater equality across the business, greater diversity, greater inclusion. And this was something that was able to deliver that. So now when people are looking at how do we take our policy and turn it into action, mentoring is part of that process and part of that delivery. Yeah. And, we think that reaction in the US is what that is. I think the concept of mentoring over in the US is a lot more prominent than it is in the UK still. So that made sense for us to then go, okay, let's basically focus more on the US side of things. And that's where we're, again, seeing the traction, seeing the results. It's making more sense for us to do it that way. So, and I think, the other way I looked at it was, when it comes to software, the US are ahead. Silicon Valley is ahead. You look at the start of the pandemic, and all those companies I mentioned went remote, without too much of a disruption. It was like, okay, look, there's all the tools, there's everything you need. We're all going to go remote. If you need anything else, let us know. Whereas like companies all over the UK were panicking and, oh my God, have we got this? Have we got that? How do we do this? How do we do that? And it was just like scrambling. So I think when it comes to things like the world of work, when it comes to tools that you're going to use and things like that, I think the US and Silicon Valley in particular is always going to be that step ahead. So by having them as our clients, we'll be a step ahead, and working with them, we'll get that step ahead where when the almost like the rest of the world catches up, we're more than ready for it.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to knowing your proposition, knowing the value that you add, and sticking to that niche as you said earlier. So that's where the best opportunity and customers are that fit that profile, and that's where you go. And if you get other people from elsewhere, then great, but don't rule out where your best customers are just because you don't think you can go over there yet.
Exactly, yeah, and that is the beauty of the internet, in that you can, you find your traction and you can then double down on it. And we've got so much, everyone's got so much data now available to them around, things like, where, if you've got a website up, where's the most traffic coming from,
Yeah.
there's a lot of information out there that can actually help you navigate that. You might be banging on the door around the UK as a UK company, but you might find that when you look at your analytics, you find that most of the people searching for your website are in France or Switzerland, or somewhere around the world. So it's like that's where you can then see if you can put a focus on and see why have you gone down that route, or it might be a particular type of company or profile of someone who's looking at your business, and that's what helps you then focus on that as well. So I think that's the beauty of it. There's a lot of information out there. It's utilizing that. It's using the power of the fact that we can do things from anywhere, and then focusing on that.
Yeah, and I think use that data, as you say. So don't hold yourself to any assumptions that you've got about what you can do or can't do, or where your customers are going to be. As you say, if you find, you should be putting out good content there, you should be talking about your products. And if you're doing that well with, the appropriate messaging, then, as you say, look at where your traffic is coming from on the website. Look at what sectors, industries, or job titles, demographics, whatever that may be. Look at the data that's there. And as you say, double down on that. Find out, well, why is it resonating there? What is it about there that's causing, interest, and go and make the most of that opportunity.
Exactly. You see this fairly regularly, where a company might start out as a tool or a product that is a provider for, let's say, any business, but then they'll find traction in a certain sector. They might go, actually, we're getting a lot of business in the legal sector or the accountancy sector, and you'll find there's a reason for that. So then that's where you can then really add a lot of value and gain a lot of traction and gain a lot of customers through that particular sector before then branching out. It's almost that to do things, there's a famous thing in Masters of Scale, which is like, to do things that scale, you have to first do things that don't scale. So if you're going to focus on one particular client or one particular sector, and that is where you then really build that up to then branch out, and go wider. So it's like inch wide, meter deep to start with, and then you can branch out.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% agree. That's certainly what we recommend. Most companies, even when they think they have done, they haven't gone deep enough with that particular niche or vertical or whatever that may be. Now, moving on from, you mentioned getting, Box as that first big kind of enterprise customer. What did it look like then from there? Were you able to kind of build marketing on the back of getting that big customer? Did it make it easier to access similar customers?
Yeah, so I think the sort of one thing that's quite paradoxical is, because we've been bootstrapped and small team, small resource available to us, we'd not really done any marketing at all. We'd done no paid marketing, and in a way that was a huge achievement to be able to then land a customer like that without doing that. But the paradoxical side of it was we'd achieved something massive and no one knew who we were.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, this is what we should be doing. I think again, you're talking about making assumptions, and it's something you should never really do. Is that we assumed getting one would lead to like an open door. It'd just be like, right, we've got major logo. This is going to then just blast the doors open for everyone else. And it didn't have that impact because, you're still building credibility. You're still building your profile. You're still building the product. The product's never finished. You're still doing that, I think. But with Box and with all those earlier customers, the thing we did really well was how closely we worked with them and have worked with them, continue to work with them, because that gives us insight into our own product, gives insight into the challenges they face, and how we can ultimately just make that more efficient, more valuable, more scalable. Yeah. And that is then what became the springboard. It did allow us to announce, obviously, a major, achievement for us, a major company as a client. And I think it's now we're starting to get that bit of traction because we've built up the credibility. We've got we've not just got, it's not just them as a logo, it's actually, here's the results, here's what we've actually produced. And then with other clients as well, we've got use cases, we've got information where we can actually use it as, it's not just, let's say, market information, it's our information from the programs we've delivered and what the platform is captured. So we've built that credibility up. Now we've got that, then, like I say, the use cases, the data, the information, and then you add things with fantastic recognized customers to that. That's big. That becomes really powerful. So then you get the next one and the next one and the next. That starts to see where it starts to come, and I think that's what's starting to happen now, is that we've got a really healthy product in place. We've got some amazing clients, some amazing use cases, some fantastic, say, logos on our books who we're working with, and just some amazing people we're working with. So it's that case of all that together makes the selling side of things a lot easier, because I think there's always going to be a bit of imposter syndrome as a founder. You're always like, you know where the product's going. So you sort of like, wherever it's at, it's never as good as it can be, because in a week's time, in a month's time, in a year's time, it's going to have X, Y, and Z on top of it and make it that much better. So you're always a bit, as much as you believe in everything and you're hype it up, I think you've always got that reservation in your mind about, where you're at. But I think we've got that confidence now because we know we're delivering. We are delivering with the product, we are delivering with the service, we are delivering for our customers, and the feedback we're getting from them is amazing. So that's allowing us then to have that confidence, which helps with gaining new customers as well.
Absolutely. I think that you're completely right that a lot of founders, because they always look into the future, they know the bugs that are in the product. They also know the features they haven't been able to build yet that they want to build. So they always know there's more value to come, which I think can cause them to lose sight of the value that existing customers or prospects can get out of the platform at the moment, compared to what they've got now, which is nothing. You can add a significant amount of value. Exactly
that. It's I think once you start building out the use cases from those earlier clients, it's where it really comes into its own, because you've got proof points for you've got proof points for the market, you've got proof points for your clients. So that's where the validation comes in. And when people are asking about it, you can go, actually, you're not just pulling out a bit of information mixed in with something else. It's like, actually, this is solid information. This is absolutely a result. This is what we do, and this is how we've done it.
Yeah, there's that social proof element, isn't it? It's someone else like me, another company like me, another HR director or whoever it may be that you're selling to, like me, has seen these results.
Exactly. That is exactly it. It's and I think, just going back to the point around the US versus the rest of the world, and as customers, I think the beauty of a lot of those companies is they still, they're massive companies, but they still have at the heart of it, the culture of a startup, because that's what they were. They were startups that have become corporates, and they recognize what they've been through, and they're probably a bit more willing at times to take a chance on something new. And that's where I think you get the proposition right, you get the deal right. That's where you get, you can get that over the line.
And when it comes to confidence in the value and also starting with the enterprise, how have you even approached the process of thinking about pricing in those kind of scenarios? I imagine it could be quite challenging, especially when you've got bigger contracts, but also longer duration contracts as well, to get that right, especially as you're still on that journey of building out the platform.
Yeah, it's hugely challenging. I spoke to a founder a couple of weeks ago about this very subject, and they've just done Series B, and they were saying, price discovery is one of the biggest challenges you'll ever go through. I think from the early instance, you're looking at other software tools, you're looking at things in the same region or market you're in, and how they're being used and how they're being priced, which can help you then shape your pricing. I think the way we've done it is that we just make it quite simple in that we do it on a tiered structure for now. The reason for this is that we know from experience of what people tend to do is they'll maybe deploy for a certain number of people or a certain size business, and they might have a very focused program to start with, and then roll it out to the wider group, to the wider network, to the wider organization. Because it's new, because mentoring can be new for a lot of people. The focus around diversity and equity and inclusion can be new for a lot of people as well. They still want to find out, how do we do this? So we'll start with a smaller number and then we'll scale it into a bigger number. But that's where we look at like a growth plan for the pricing as well. So it's like, okay, there's the price for that amount of people. And instead of it then going, okay, we're going from 200 people to 1,000 people, and suddenly the price is going to go, 10x or something. And it's like, actually, it doesn't have to. Let's look at if you're going to do that over 2 years, you're going to do that over a year, and then factor it into the process. So I think being quite transparent with people is what's useful. From experience, the CFOs, the people that sign it off, they want a number that they know they can have factored in, and then they can budget for the year after as well. So they go, right, okay, we paid X for that this year. What are we paying for it next year? It's like, why has it gone up so much? Or, okay, it's going to be that. Right, it's factored in, it's in the contract, it's done, it's dealt with. Know where we're at. That makes their life a lot easier, rather than, I think, because what sometimes when you have the things like individual pricing, that can I think Slack do a really brilliant thing with their fair pricing offer, you might have seen, but I've heard firsthand that like a lot of the CFOs don't actually like it, because it's like, we paid X amount, let's say we paid 50,000 for this, why have we got 5,000 coming back? It's like, because of the fair pricing system. It's like, but we budgeted it, we paid it out. You're messing with my numbers. So it's as much as a good thing to have, it's like, at the same time, I think people just like to know how much they're spending, where's the budget for next year and things like that. So I think being transparent with customers at the start is always useful. Building something out that works for both sides. You look ultimately looking for that win-win. What's going to work for us to deliver it, that we're not going to be completely stretched, or and then what's going to work for you from a budget side, and make it something that works for everyone. So it's still always going to be a challenge, I think. Price discovery, as my fellow founder said, is the one of the most difficult challenges you'll face. But it is that thing of, over time, you will land to a point where you can have quite a set price in place.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of good to hear those points on predictability and transparency of pricing versus, we're going to go into big organization, we can have lots of different usage levers here, but it actually creates a very unpredictable price for your customer. But as well as having that buying process, almost, recognizing not what you want your selling process to be. I always talk about a buying process more than a selling process. So it's, what is their experience of, from purchase to onboarding? What does that look like? And I think the growth plan that you mentioned is, just fits with that, doesn't it?
Exactly. And this is another thing is, I think when you're in those early days of those very first customers, you might be thinking the person you are dealing with for the deal is the person who signs it off, but ultimately they might go upstairs, they might go up to one person above, or a committee or something like that. So there's different, understanding how their internal operations work helps you both, because I think you might be really scared to say a number, or you might think thinking, I don't want to kill the deal, and it's like, but then if you go too low, they might not take you seriously. So it's that balance of it. And the other thing is, the person you're speaking to might go, oh, that's far too much, or actually, okay, we can probably do that, or whatever. And like, they've then got to take it to someone. So even they might have the most blank reaction you've ever seen, because they'll just write it down and go, okay, I'll go back to my manager and tell them that's how much it is. So it's it's that thing of again, I think when you're being transparent with them, understanding, like you said, understanding the buying process is really important, because it helps you figure out what they've got to do internally to get it over the line. And the other thing is, I think when it comes to that is, you might agree everything, but then you've got to go through their internal processes, vendor processes and onboarding processes and things like that, which might take another 4 weeks, might take another month, 2 months, it might take a week. If you don't know, you can be in a bit of a limbo situation. You might do quite a lot of work to then, maybe that's where it might fall down. So I think that's another important thing to understand, is what is the vendor process? How long does that take? Who's making the decision on buying this? Where's the budget coming from? Which department, which team, who's just understanding all that in the earliest onset is saving time and energy and effort on both sides.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. So, given these successes then that you had so far, you're getting that traction, what's next for my2be, both from a business perspective as well as from a product perspective as well, for anyone that might be interested?
Yeah, I think from a business point of view, we're starting to grow and starting to then look at like how we do that, because I think one thing we have done is, like I said, bootstrapped. We've been a very small team, very lean, which I actually think with the potential economic situation we're all facing is actually prepared us massively well. But we are looking at growing now towards the end of the year, looking at investment as well, and having some conversations around that right now, as well as just onboarding new clients. So we've got a bit of everything happening at the same time, which is a good position to be in, to be honest. But I think that's from the business side. And I think for a product side, I think at the moment we're just looking at constant evolution of it in terms of, I think one thing is the onboarding side is making that much more automated. We're adding more integrations, we're adding more features in that sense. But one thing we always get really high praise for is the simplicity of the product. It's not overcomplicated, it's not overthought, and that's something we never want to stray from. We want it to be a really simple process for the end user to create a relationship and build that relationship. And I suppose that one of the biggest evolutions we've got at the moment is that admin and reporting side. We gather quite a bit of data, and the delivery of that and the demonstration of that is the next evolution of it. So we have a lot of raw data displayed in the admin and the reporting, but creating like actual insights, data insights is one of the next evolutions for us. Giving like a really holistic view of what the benefits are, what the organization looks like, and why you should have everyone on a mentoring program in the organization.
Yeah, fantastic. I think sounds like you've got an exciting few months ahead of you for this year and beyond as well. And I'm sure, certainly fueled by the hybrid working scenario that, pretty much every organization is seeing themselves in these days. Yeah,
that it's been a journey to this date, and it does very much feel like we're in, by being so resilient, by the evolution that we've been on, we are finding ourselves in a right place, right time moment. But that wouldn't have happened without everything that's gone before it. We joke that we're halfway into a 10-year overnight success. So absolutely, that's where we're going for.
Fantastic. I look forward to reading about that overnight success.
Thanks very much.
Cool. So Adam, thank you very much for taking the time. Really appreciate it and really enjoyed the conversation. I think there's a lot that other entrepreneurs, other founders can take away from this, from choosing your markets in terms of geographical, but also segmentation as well, and really going deep on solving a particular challenge, and don't hold yourself to assumptions that might be too small for what you can actually achieve. So thank you for that. And just to kind of round off, where should people go if they want to check out the platform and find out more themselves?
Sure thing. The website is my2be.com. We're easily findable as well on social and things like LinkedIn. We're quite open to have conversations with people who can contact us via the website or via those channels, whether that's founders, prospective new customers. Always happy to see where we can help.
Cool, fantastic. And thank you again for joining us, Adam, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Inside the Scale Up. Remember, for the show notes and in-depth resources from today's guest, you can find these on the website insidethescaleup.com. You can also leave feedback on today's episode, as well as suggest guests and companies you'd like to hear from. Thank you for listening.